Who's Glenn? Who's Carla? Real quick.
Glenn is a inner city child born in the city of Chicago. I'm the oldest of 4 children. My father left when I was 2 years old, so I was raised by my mother and my grandmother. My grandmother was the person who introduced me to Christ at a young age. I always tell people I was a drug baby, and they said, "What drugs were you on?" I said, "No, I was drugged to church every Sunday." So my grandmother was the one who introduced me to Christ. She was my original Bible teacher, my original Sunday school teacher, and I grew up in the inner city of Chicago.
Carla, I am the fifth child, the baby of 5 girls. I am a mother of 2. My son is 26 and my daughter is going on 30. I'm extremely proud of them. And I homeschool, parent, did the whole nine. I'm proud of what they have become. I'm a wife, Glenn, and we've been married for 28 years. I'm a teacher. I love to teach and I love to help people. I love God. I can't leave that out a lot. My grandmother, she emulated Christ to me at a very young age. I was baptized in 1979. Strayed away from my faith in my early 20s. Came back to Christ in my mid-20s. Built a astounding relationship with him since 2000. And I've been very close to him by the hip ever since.
Well, my career journey started right after high school. I started working for the Social Security Administration. I actually took the civil service exam as a junior in high school. I walked across the stage in June of 1981 and got a letter from the government saying, "Hey, we got a job for you," to start 2 months later. I worked for the government about a year and a half, and then the money just wasn't making ends meet. I was newly married right out of high school and had a son. So I wanted to make extra money part-time and went to the military recruiting station, wanted to join the National Guard. They said I scored so high on the ASVAB test that I should just go in active duty, and so I went into the military. From 84 to 87, I served as a U.S. Army infantry soldier. Out of all the jobs they asked me to serve, I wanted to be like John Wayne. I wanted to pull grenades with my teeth, so I became an infantry soldier. In 1985 is when I really saw God work in my life. I fell off a cliff 5 stories. I was in the hospital for 3 months. They told me by the time I reached 22, I wouldn't be walking, but I had a praying grandmother. My grandmother prayed for me, and as you can see, I'm still walking. I still have my aches and pains, but I have another friend who fell 1 story, broke his neck and passed away. I fell 5 stories and don't remember hitting the ground. From there, I was released from the military. I went home, finally got a chance to meet my father, who called me when he was dying of lung cancer. Had 30 days to live. The military allowed me to go home on leave to be with him, and he lived for 6 months. Right after that, I thought I was going back to my duty station at Fort Ord, and I was medically discharged with an honorable discharge because of my injuries. So now I was back in Chicago, didn't know what I was going to do. All my furniture stuff was there. The military shipped it back. I went from there, I got a job with the Postal Service. Worked with the Postal Service for 18 months and went into financial services. Worked for financial services 15 and a half years. During that time, God called me in the ministry. I planted a church in Chicago, Illinois in 2002, pastored until 2016, where God told me it was time to move on. He wanted me to do something on a broader scale. I moved to San Diego, California. Thought I was going to be working with a group of churches as a missions pastor. When I got there, I found out there was no space for me on the staff. I wasn't told that until I got all the way there, which was all right. 2 days later, I got a phone call from Saddleback Church and Pastor Rick Warren. And I had been a trainer for Purpose Driven for years, and they had created this new coaching program that they wanted me to be part of. So I was the regional director for California, Arizona, and Nevada, which happened to be 2/3 of the churches that was working with Purpose Driven. From there, I went to help plant churches through the Peace Plan in the country of Uganda, Africa. My wife and I went there for 12 days and started the process with about 3,600 pastors. We got back and we found out that Hurricane Harvey had happened here in Houston. We were just watching CNN. We thought some people just walking in the street. Saw a lady with a baby, and I saw the sign, Highway 10. And I looked at my wife, she looked at me, and we started crying and said, hey, we got to do something. So as soon as the airports opened up, we flew here to Houston. There was 2 churches we were working with. We got a phone call from Saddleback saying, hey, look, we want to send truckloads of supplies. Would you do the logistical work for us? And so we were the boots on the ground for them all during that process. One of the pastors that we were working with here in Houston asked, would I be interested in moving to Houston? And I asked him, had he ever been to San Diego? He told me no. And I said, well, that's why you would ask me something like that. And I told him, no, I wasn't interested. He said, just pray about it. And I got back on the airplane and told my wife, I don't bother God with stuff I don't want to do. And so for 4 months, he called me and asked me, hey, have you prayed about it? Have you prayed about it? And finally, my wife asked me to pray. And when we began to pray, my phone rang, and it was him. And he says, what are you doing? I says, I'm praying with my wife. And he says, you know, it's the weirdest thing. I was on my way into a staff meeting, and God says, stop in your tracks and call Bone. And I said, what did he tell you to call me for? He said, I don't know. He said, you need to call me right now. And as soon as he said that, Carla began to cry. And he says, what's wrong with your wife? I said, nothing, we got to move. And we knew then that we were moving to Houston. And we packed up, moved here to Houston. I served as an executive pastor of a church here in Houston for about 17 months. I knew my season was up there. And after that, I was like, okay, what to do next, God? And from there, my wife was watching Joel, and she says, God says we need to go to Lakewood. And I says, okay. I'd never been to Lakewood the whole time I was here. We got here, and my life changed from the point I was here. And we have been here almost 2 years now. We know, I told her, I said, it's a funny thing. I think God took us all the way around to get us here. And so that's my road for my journey right now. I have been praying and asking God, for about 10 months, the past 10 months, God, what is it I'm supposed to do? I'm 60 years old now. What am I supposed to do? I didn't see church planning at 60, and I'm like, okay, I still consult, talk with churches now and today, but I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do? And at the same time I'm praying this prayer, our savings account is getting smaller and smaller because we're paying bills and stuff is being taken out, nothing's being put in. So I'm like, okay, God, what is it that you want me to do? And so in Katy, where we live, they were building the 7-Eleven. I watched the 7-Eleven being built from the first time they brought the bricks in, and we were trying to guess what is it, because they put up a new retail store, but we didn't know what it was. And then finally they put up the 7-Eleven. And I said, wow, honey, this is going to be a 7-Eleven. So she says, okay, 7-Eleven, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. So one day I'm driving by the 7-Eleven, and God says, I want you to go in there and get a job in there. Well, nothing's below me for what God says. And I says, okay, what do you want me to do? He says, I want you to go in there and apply for a job at the 7-Eleven. Now, I have been going in the 7-Eleven for about 4 months. So I know the manager, the assistant manager, everybody works in the store, because I have that just type of mannerisms that I try to, everybody I meet, I want to try to get to know them. And so when I walked in the store and I says, hey, you guys hired? They said, yeah. And they said, why are you asking? I said, well, I want to apply for a job. They said, you kidding? I said, no, I'm not kidding. I said, I want to apply for a job. And they said, well, we have a position available. Would you like the evening shift or the night shift? The night shift is from 10 at night to 7 in the morning. I said, I'll take the night shift from 10 o'clock to 7 in the morning. They said, you sure? I said, yeah. Will you be working by yourself? I said, okay, I'll work by myself. And I took the position and then came home and told my wife what I did. And the first thing she says, you're kidding. No, you didn't. I said, yes, I did. I said, tomorrow I have to go up for the training. You'll see tomorrow. So I went to training the next day. I came home, I had my shirt. And she knew for a fact then that I had signed up because I got the 7-Eleven shirt. I said, they didn't have my name badge ready yet. I said, but I go tomorrow and I pick up my name badge. And so I got it in my pocket. Until the next day, and that was my name badge. So when I put the name badge on the shirt, she says, you have got to be kidding. you went and took a job at 7-Eleven? I says, it wasn't me. God told me he wanted me to work at the 7-Eleven. And I started the process of working at 7-Eleven.
What was your reaction to that when he told you that? What did you think?
I said that way. I said it to his face. I said, are you sure God told you that? And he said, yeah, I'm positive. Then I yelled at him and said, impossible. There's no way God told you that. You've been planting churches, you've been recognized regionally, nationally, internationally. You have so much talent. I said, are you the general manager? He said, no. The manager? He said, no. I said, so what is your title? What do you do there? He said, I stock, and I'm the sales associate. And I said, what do they pay? He said, minimum wage. I said, and God told you to do that? He said, yeah, he did. I said, I hope he did, because I'm going to go ask him. And he said, go ahead. I wouldn't make this up, I promise. And I still thought it was a prank. He's a jokester, by nature. So I thought he was pranking me at the time. And he went out for work one night. I got in the car and I drove up there. And I hid around the corner. I wanted to see if he was actually doing this. And I walked in, and I finally walked in, and I just looked at him and I laughed. And he was like, laughing at? And I was like, you for real? He said, I am. So the next night, I tipped out the house and I parked the car. And I glanced through the window, and he had his earpods on, and he's mopping the floor. And he's having a good old time. And I'm watching him, and I'm like, and I'm in the car, and I'm pleading with God, Lord, did you do this? And did we come all the way to Texas to do this? I'm thinking, we could have did this in Chicago. Like, are you kidding? And what I saw isn't what I saw. What I saw that I thought was funny was really Glenn humbling himself that no job was too small for him. And then I cried my eyeballs out because I thought I wouldn't have did that. And then I thought, wow, I got some real big lessons to learn and some big shoes to fill. Because I just thought with his talent and his infectious personality and his ingrained nature of loving people, surely God wouldn't be calling you to work at 7-Eleven mopping the floor. Boy, was I wrong. I was wrong. And then we saw what God was up to. We saw what God was up to later on.
You have a saying?
Yeah, I've had a saying that I've had for years now. And the saying basically says, if service is below you, then leadership is above you. Most people want leadership and don't understand. That's why the Bible says the greatest among you will be servants. And so to me, it's always been, I always tell people, the scriptures tell us to become all things to all people for the chance to save some. And so I knew that God was sending me there beyond the fact of 7-Eleven. The good part about it was I worked a 10 to 7 shift, so I didn't have to sell alcohol. I didn't have to sell lottery tickets. So basically, I saw people as they were ending their day and beginning their day. I had my best time with God at night, 1 to 2 to 3 o'clock in the mornings, where I met all the police officers, all the state troopers, all those people we allowed to come in to get free coffee. I had an opportunity to talk and pray with them, to see some of the things that they were going through. I'll never forget, one day I was there and there was a gentleman came in and he wanted to buy a whole roll of Skull. Well, I don't know anything about dip. And I told him, man, I don't know nothing about dip tobacco. You got to point and show me where it is. And he says, the mint ones, the green can. And he pointed up and I grabbed one and he said, no, I want the whole roll. Well, I don't know what it is. And I reached up, he said, yes, that old one is wrapped up. It's 5 cans. And so I put him down there and I would always joke with people and I say, hey man, you don't look 18. I need to see your ID. And he would pull his ID out and we began to talk. And he said, man, I said, man, what do you need that for? And he said, you know, it's a bad habit. You know, I started this when I was in the Navy. And I swore to myself, when it gets to $5 a can, I'm going to stop doing it. Then it got to $5 a can and I stopped doing it. And he said, man, I just picked this bad habit up about 4 months ago. I said, well, why don't you pick it back up? He said, man, I lost my wife. And right then, the Spirit had me basically put my hand over his hand as he had that skull. And I said, man, that is not what God wants you to do in this time. He don't want you to pick up bad habits to do that. I said, you can find the hope you need in Christ. And I began to pray for him. And as I prayed for him, he pushed the skull cans back to me at the end. And there was a line behind me of people. And I just felt at that time, so God, I don't want to get in trouble. It's being recorded and everything, but I just felt compelled to pray for this man. And when he pushed the cans back and said, man, that's all right, I don't need it. He says, you work here every night? I said, sir, I'm here 5 days a week. He said, I want to make sure I come back at night so we can continue that conversation. So as soon as he walked out the door, the line behind him, I said to him, I'm so sorry that I held you all up. I said, but I was really helping him. He's going through a tough time. He lost his wife. There was a little old lady behind him. She said, honey, you don't have to apologize to me. I need some of that you gave him. And so I began to pray for her and the man behind her. And so it became a prayer corner. And I'll just never forget, I called my daughter and told her to bring my granddaughter up there. I said, bring my granddaughter, because my son and my daughter couldn't believe it. I said, Pawpaw wants to buy her a Slurpee. And so she says, what? I said, Pawpaw wants to buy her a Slurpee. Bring her up to 7-Eleven. I'm going to buy her a Slurpee. And so she came up, my granddaughter came up. I got her a Slurpee. She sat at one of the little tables there. She was drinking the Slurpee. Oh, Pawpaw, this is just so good. And so my daughter took her out to go to Chick-fil-A, which is next door. And when they came back, she pulled the door open. There was a gentleman pushing the door open. And he said to my daughter, he says, are you about to go in this store? She said, yeah. She says, behind the counter is going to change your life. And she says, what guy behind the counter? It's that guy right there. She says, that's my dad. Well, you need to go in there. I come in here every day because that guy changes my life. Every time I come, the way he talks to me. And so God had me to work there for about 3 months. And at the end of 3 months, he let me know it was time. And so when I told him, look, it was time, God says, this is my time. I'm done. All my employees, the people that were working with me, were in tears. I gave everybody my number. I said, listen, I live 2 blocks from here. If you guys need me, I'm here, and I'm going to be coming in the store all the time. But I realized that's what God was doing. So I went home. And I'm like, okay, God, you sent me there for 2 months. I did work you wanted me to do for almost 3 months. What am I supposed to do now? And so I was waiting for a phone call from a job, which I took the interview in November. They supposed to call me back in 2 weeks. We're now in January. In January, I had called twice. Hey, what happened? Oh, we should be calling you in a couple of weeks. Nothing happened. So February started. When February started, nothing happened. So I didn't call him anymore. I said, God, it's in your hands. I'm not chasing anybody for anything. And I began to get calls from friends and clients that I had over the years, 15, 20 years ago, telling me that they needed help with their retirement planning and everything else. And we're all in the same age bracket. And I said, man, I've been in the industry in 15 years. And so they began to tell me, hey, man, we need help. What can you do to help us? And that's when the Lord shared with me and says, that's it. I'm like, what's it? That's it. And so I said, well, I got to go back and get all my licensings and everything else done. I signed up for the class, scheduled the exam before Christmas, hadn't touched the books, hadn't studied. And I just felt like I'm not going to get online and take this test. I'm going to bomb this test. I haven't studied any of this stuff. I got this big old book. I've never touched it. I'm in a leadership program. I'm reading off my books. I haven't touched no books. And so it's Saturday morning. I'm like, but I don't want to waste my money. When I woke up that morning, I heard the Spirit of God tell me what I used to tell my kids. There is no question that a teacher can ask that God cannot answer. And I got up and got dressed and went in my office. And I had 2.5 hours to take the test. I finished it in 45 minutes. And all I had to do was to hit the last button to say finish, and then it circles and tells you what the test score is. I had to score 70. I scored 81. I'm running through the house, telling my wife, I passed. I passed. And she said, how you passed? You didn't study. I said, God passed. And so I got all of the license and everything back. Some of the first contracts I got paid me enough money that it paid off all of my debts. So I'm sitting here today basically saying all of my debts are paid off now. And that's not one. I've had two things that have happened that have basically cleared the way for me to do ministry. And that's what me and my wife have been praying. Lord, we want to do ministry. That's what we're called to do. I want to get back out in the street. I want to be able to help people. But I can't do it if my finances are suffering. And so that was our prayer. I wrote on the wall. When the first day we wrote on the wall, I wrote on the wall and said, God, help me to be in ministry, to develop ministry the way I want to in 2024. And I wrote 2 things on there. Within 2 weeks, the first one was done. Within another month, the second one was done. So we're just sitting here now saying, God, what do you want us to do? We're looking forward to going back to Uganda in September and everything else, because I always feel if you just wait on what God is telling you to do, that's the thing about it. That waiting period, that waiting season, there are different seasons in our lives, but what I tell people is that the hardest one is that waiting season. Because you want to do something. You just want something to happen. And I didn't learn God lives in Kairos. We live in Chronos. And so his time is different from mine. But I want to try to run and get things done. But I can hear Paul say, be anxious for nothing. God knows what he's doing, and surely he does. So it has just been a blessing to us. And it's like as soon as one came down, I'm like, okay, this is it. And then God says, nope, I got something else I'm going to do for you as well. So now we're literally just sitting here and saying, God, whatever you want us to do in ministry, we're open to do it, because I don't have to look over my shoulder no more and say, how's this bill going to be paid? How's this bill going to be paid? Because we just having the honor now to be able to write checks and tell people we owe you no more. Only call me to tell me happy birthday or Merry Christmas.
Carla, what do you feel like you gotten out of this? What's something that I think the mission is? What has it taught y'all?
It taught me to be patient and wait on God. It also taught me to stop trying to do everything. Let God be God and let him do his part, and just wait and be patient with him. And everything is you're not going to understand it. And I'm one of those analytical, I need to know, I'm going to put everything in order, I'm detail-oriented. So when I don't know something, it's just, I start sweating. And this taught me to just trust him, even when I don't understand. And the whole totality of our story, he moved us from Chicago to California. He didn't just say, I want you to move and then we'll figure out when you get there. He said, I need you to sell everything and dump it. I had inherited my grandmother's property. We had a commercial building. We had our home. He said, dump it. So I had a garage sale for 8 weeks every Saturday, because he said, sell it. And I was moving into a 2-bedroom apartment from a 14-room home. And most people would have said, oh no. And I didn't want to initially. I drug my feet, and that process was about 4 years of him telling us this and us actually doing it. But we dumped everything, and we went to California, and we get there only to find out that he couldn't be put on staff right away because he was in the middle of a building project, and they couldn't add staff because of the loan. So now we're thinking, uh-oh, did we miss God? Did we hear him? did you hear what I heard? We're questioning now. And then Saddleback called. So we're like, oh boy. So then we're thinking, okay, this is great. We had a great time with that until we came back to the States and Harvey hit. And then God said, okay, go to Texas. And then we're thinking, did you hit it? We're just wondering. And I'm like, move to Texas? And he said, yes. Texas wasn't on my life plan. I had never been. I was like, oh, it's hot. I said, Lord, no, really? So I drug my feet with that. And it took us about 5 months. And I just said, I just surrendered and said, okay, Father, you know. And then when we came here, then all of what happened when we got here, by that time, I was moved out, spent out, tired out. I was just out. I just so glad. I was like, what are we doing? We dumped everything. We moved everything. We uprooted everything. We left our families behind. We came to California where we only had a few people that we knew in ministry. And then here in Texas where we didn't know anyone. And I said, Glenn, are we really following him? Are you sure this is what he's saying? So I kept questioning. And every time I would question and question God, he said, of course I said it. And I kept saying, but why? I was like that little kid, but why? But why? And he would only give me one little step at a time. He wouldn't give me the whole story. And I like the story. He said, just follow me. And I did. Every little breadcrumb he put down, I just kept picking it up, confused, kind of scratching my head. And then when we hit a financial snafu, I just reminded him of what he said. I remember that prayer kind of went like, I used to pray real soft and diplomatic, oh, Father. But that prayer kind of went, Lord, you said you are not a God that you shall lie, nor the Son of Man that you shall repent. Will you not do that what you said? I need to bring your word back to you. And so that was a different kind of prayer. And he said, I haven't forgot about you at all. He said, you are right on time, right on target. You're exactly where I want you to be. I only came to Lakewood once to see Joyce Myers when we first moved here. I'm a huge, huge, huge fan of hers. And I used to follow her for years. And I came to see her that one time, but he wasn't here. I came with a group of people, and I had never been here before. And I was riding with someone, so I didn't know how to get here. And I just happened to we were at a snafu with our finances. We're crying out and praying to God. My 3 o'clock prayers was just filled with tears. And I came into my bedroom and he said, turn the TV on. The last station that was watched was something he was watching, which is sports. I turned the TV on and went straight to Joel Osteen. And I was about to turn the channel and he said, put it down. I put the remote down and I just sat in the chair and watched. He said, I need you to find that church and I need you to go there tomorrow. That was a Saturday. And I told my husband and he said, where is it? I said, I only went once. I don't even remember. I was riding with somebody. And we looked it up and he said, well, what time they service? And we looked it up and he said, let's go to the 8:30. I said, sound good to me. And we came here and it was obvious that we were being sent here. Didn't know why. And because we're thinking, Lord, this is huge. They don't need us. We was looking for the grassroots, let's roll our sleeves up type of ministry. And he said, I need you to sit there. I need you to heal. I'm like, heal? He said, this is a hope center. He said, and what Joel teaches is like jet view. He said, I need you to listen. I need you to open your heart. And we did. And I think we cried every Sunday for the first year.
We were just crybabies in church, sit by us, and we just sitting there crying because
He's in the water.
everything that Joel says connects you right into where I am.
And where we've been.
Yeah, it just covers everything.
Yeah.
Where we are. And then it's just been a blessing from there to be in the leadership program and Lesson to Be at Freedom Ministry. We are so excited about that because that represented the type of ministry that we were involved with in Chicago. We were involved with a ministry in Chicago called The Bridge, which was a Tuesday night service in which we brought brothers and sisters who accepted Christ while in the penitentiary. So they were either released on parole or they were in a halfway house. And they were brought there where we would serve food to them, and they would be part of a service where they would hear 3 10-minute sermons from pastors from the community. And then we would open up our churches to let them know, hey, look, you guys can be involved with our churches as well. And we did that for about, 3.5 years, 4 years with them. And so many of those guys accepted Christ. We've had a bunch of them that were part of our church. So to be at Freedom was just a great thing for me because I think that's a missing element. I believe a lot of people that are even still sitting in churches today have accepted Christ. God has opened up the jail cell, but they haven't come out yet because they haven't forgiven themselves, even though Christ has forgiven them. And I think that's what this church offers. It's the fact of, we've all made mistakes, but when God opens the cell, he wants you to come out because you're free. And a lot of people, it's like being incarcerated. When you've lost time of society, it takes time to get yourself back to it. And I think that's the power that this church does. It brings hope to hopeless people. And from me coming from a place where hopelessness was rampant, you look at my life, I should have been a statistic. I should have either been in the penitentiary or dead. Because most people in Chicago, 66% of the children that I used to pastor didn't have a father. So I became a father to a lot of those children, where I ended up being at their schools to pick up their report cards and at their graduations and proms and pre-K graduations, because there was no representation of a male figure. So I knew when it was report card Sunday, I was going to be after church for an hour or two, because every kid wanted to bring their report card to sit down with pastor to show them how they were doing in school. And so I know how important that is, because I didn't have a father, but my mother was smart enough to put the right men around me that taught me how to be a man. Not just a man, but the right man who could teach me the things that I needed to do to help me become a man. So I didn't go the routes that so many of my friends did. So many of my friends died before I was 15. I got friends that's in the penitentiary still today. So I know the importance of what it is to be in the right environments and the right situations. So to us, Lakewood is just a oasis of love. It's truly an oasis of love, that when you come here, no matter what your situation is, everybody can use some hope. Because what I've learned in my whole life is that everybody smiling is not happy. People have learned how to wear a mask to cover what's going on with them. And the only person that can reach a person like that is God. So that's where we are with that.
When we met Pastor Bowman, it was, we looked at each other.
Pastor Bowman, we are just so excited about being able to reach people who many people may feel they can't be reached. Reach people who feel that their sins cannot be forgiven. People who feel, I've done that. But the one thing I always tell people is this: we're all ex-something. We all were held bound. So it's not a thing where yours is greater than mine. Sin doesn't have a grade. That's right. It's hot. And what I always tell people when they say, well, I did something worse for you, I say, here's something I want you to remember. In all areas of hell is hot. It's not one's cooler than the other. All of hell is hot. So it doesn't make a difference of what you did versus what I did or what you did. Hell is hot on all sides. And I think that when you bring hope back to people, then they can relate to God. And that's what we love about bringing people back to Christ, to understand he's not mad at you, he's mad about you. Right?
Yeah.
If somebody is on the fence about being obedient to God in something that sounds wild, what would you tell them?
What I would tell them is this, keep your ears close to God's lips, because God does not scream, he whispers. One of the things I've learned years ago, I've got tons of little pads all around my house, because I've realized that when God says stuff, some things I need to write down because he doesn't repeat some things. But if, the songwriter says, at the cross is where I first saw the light. That's the closeness of it. But we have to learn how to walk with Christ and to walk with God and to understand that the truth of Jeremiah 29:11, that he does have plans for us. But those plans are not going to be what I write down. They're going to be his plans, his purposes that's going to be there. So I've got to be at a point that if I want to do God's will, I got to be willing to listen to what he says. And so, most of it won't make sense. I've had times where I've saved money for projects and he says, no, take that money and give it here. And I give it. And most people say, you're going to give? Yeah, I'm going to give because he said it. And God always does an exchange for something. I always know that when you are obedient, the two most important things to me in the Christian walk that I think most people overlook is obedience and trust. And if you can obey and trust God, see, a lot of people say they trust God. It's easy to trust God when things are going good. But the true test of God is when you can trust him when things don't make sense, when I don't understand. That's what God is looking for. That's what I call blind trust. My grandmother used to say to me, and I'm going to end it with this. My grandmother used to say to me this: it's better to have God and not need him than to need God and not have him. And so walking with God like this has just been the way I've done it for 20, 30 years, that God has never failed me. When we sing the song, he won't fail me now, he won't. And so I've been down to what we call the midnight hour. And he always comes through every time. He has never let me down. And so even if it feels uncomfortable, you may see me swerve, I'm trusting because he's never let me down. His track record has been whatever he told me to do. When I did it, it came out exactly the way he says. So my thing would be for everybody, be anxious for nothing. Trust God, because truly what he says he will do. There are 7,000 promises in the Bible. For every problem you find, line it up with a